Welcome back, everyone. When we talk about love stories that have permanently etched themselves into the global cultural subconscious, we almost always default to temporary infatuations or tragic, brief encounters. But behavior science proves that the ultimate frontier of human performance is not the spark of initial attraction. It is the brutal, beautiful architecture of lifelong endurance. Today, we are cracking open the absolute definitive manual on romantic longevity and memory retrieval. Nicholas Sparks's global phenomenon, The Notebook. We are stripping away the superficial Hallmark clichés, throwing out traditional fairy tale narratives, and giving you the exact neurological and psychological blueprint of how deep-seated relational commitments fight back against time, trauma, and cognitive decline. Let's decode the framework. Introduction: the compounding power of emotional indelibility. Success on a multi-decade scale is never an accident. When a narrative captures the hearts of millions across the globe, it is because it touches an unalterable psychological truth. The Notebook is often characterized as a classic, sentimental tear-jerker, but beneath its poetic exterior lies a profound case study in neurobiology, socio-economic friction, and the deliberate construction of an uncompromised shared identity. At its absolute core, the narrative tracks a volatile generational collision between two completely polarized human blueprints. Noah Calhoun, a hyper-grounded poetic laborer who operates in total alignment with nature and personal internal truth, and Allie Nelson, a hyper-sheltered, high-society aristocrat trapped within the rigid, transactional expectations of post-depression high society. The magnetic pull of the story is driven entirely by the optimization of emotional compounding. Just as James Clear proved that micro-habits compound financially and behaviorally over time, Nicholas Sparks demonstrates that emotional micro-commitments, letters written in secret, promises kept across wartime intervals, and the daily, unglamorous ritual of reading to a partner experiencing severe dementia, create an unbreakable neurological anchor. The immediate outcome of a single romantic gesture feels completely invisible. But when you compound these behaviors consistently over an entire lifetime, the psychological trajectory is absolutely astounding. To understand this dynamic, we must step past the tears and dissect the raw operational systems of enduring love. Phase 1. The architecture of the anchor, understanding Noah Calhoun. To comprehend the sheer longevity of the relationship, one must conduct a thorough diagnostic of Noah Calhoun's internal psychology. Noah is the ultimate manifestation of structural groundedness. He is a man who requires very little external validation from the modern, hyper-consumerist marketplace. His wealth is measured not in corporate capital, but in his deep capacity for presence, his love for classical poetry, and his raw physical ability to restore broken structures. When Noah falls in love with Allie during a single, golden summer in New Bern, North Carolina, his brain does not merely experience a temporary spike in dopamine. It builds a permanent identity-based anchor. The anatomy of an emotional anchor. Unfiltered radical presence. Complete neural alignment. Wartime isolation and focus greater than 365 days of explicit letters. Meticulous physical labor. Rebuilding the physical monolith. When Allie is forced to leave due to maternal intervention, Noah does not allow the physical separation to dilute his core commitment. For 365 consecutive days, he writes a detailed letter to her, casting a daily vote for the identity of her partner. When the letters go unanswered due to systematic interception, he pivots from linguistic tracking to physical environmental design. He spends years painstakingly restoring a decaying, historic plantation house exactly to the hyper-specific specifications Allie had dreamed of years prior. This restoration is not a desperate, unrequited obsession. It is a monument of absolute clarity. Noah removes all cognitive friction from his environment, constructing a physical beacon that acts as a direct, unmissable cue to call Allie back to her true self. Phase 2. The social cage, the dilemma of Allie Nelson. Conversely, Allie Nelson's narrative arc is an extraordinary study in the suffocating weight of systemic societal programming. Allie is a woman born into extreme socio-economic privilege, but that privilege functions as an invisible cage. Every single variable in her environment, her education, her posture, her musical training, and her ultimate engagement to Lon Hammond Jr., a wealthy, high-status war hero and lawyer, is orchestrated by her parents to maximize social capital and corporate security. In behavioral science, this is known as a delayed return social environment. Allie is explicitly trained to postpone her immediate internal desires in favor of long-term class preservation. Lon Hammond represents the perfect output-based target. He is handsome, rich, powerful, and deeply respectable. The dual identity matrix. The high society blueprint, the natural identity. Calculated transactional safety, raw artistic expression. Painting. High status public validation, unfiltered emotional presence. Armored emotional compliance, deep connection to nature. But Allie's true core identity, her passion for painting, her uninhibited laughter, her wild, free-spirited expression, was exclusively activated in the high-polarity environment created by Noah. When she spots the newspaper article showcasing Noah standing in front of the masterfully restored house, it triggers a massive cognitive dissonance. She is forced to choose between a life optimized for external social praise, processes, and outcomes, and a life aligned with her deepest internal truth, identity. Her return to New Bern is a radical boundary negotiation designed to test whether her old self is still alive. Phase 3, the reignition phase, overcoming the friction of lost time. The second act of the novel serves as a masterclass in overcoming interpersonal friction and dismantling psychological walls. When Allie arrives at Noah's estate, there is an initial layer of polite, hyper-conscious awkwardness. They are no longer the teenagers of summer. They are adults carrying the scars of a brutal world war and years of separate development. The author masterfully illustrates that the key to reigniting past polarity is not a sudden, aggressive push, but the deliberate reintroduction of shared, high-dopamine environmental cues. Noah takes Allie out onto the lake in a rowboat, surrounded by thousands of migrating white swans. Natural environmental cue, high dopamine, shared wonder, dissolution of armor. This sequence is a deliberate deployment of sensory immersion. The silence of the water, the overwhelming visual landscape, and the sudden, violent downpour of a summer storm force both characters to abandon their calculated social personas. When the rain hits, the societal armor melts. Allie demands to know why Noah never wrote to her, breaking through years of polite suppression. The revelation that Noah sent 365 letters, that his commitment never wavered for a single day, instantly shatters Allie's confirmation bias. The feedback loop is closed, and the pent-up emotional compounding of 14 years explodes into radical, uncompromised reconnection. Phase 4, the maternal confrontation, systems of protection versus status. The absolute turning point of the young adult narrative arc occurs when Allie's mother, and Nelson, arrives at Noah's house to intervene, and represents the ultimate gatekeeper of the high society class system. However, instead of painting her as a cartoonish villain, Sparks introduces a profound layer of empathetic psychological complexity, and takes Allie on a drive to a nearby industrial site, pointing out a rugged, working-class laborer who is sweating in the heat. She reveals to Allie that years ago, she too was wildly in love with a lower-class man, just like Noah. The maternal compromise system. Rejection of shadow selection, choice of financial security. Long-term rationalization, suppressing the old passion. Interventional repetition, forcing the daughter to comply. And explains that she ultimately chose safety, status, and stability over passion, and that she loves her husband and the life they built. This scene is critical. It exposes the multi-generational cycle of emotional suppression, and is desperately trying to force her daughter to repeat her own compromise because acknowledging that Allie's love for Noah is viable would force and to confront the devastating reality of her own abandoned path. In a moment of radical vulnerability, and hands Allie the 365 intercepted letters, relinquishing her control and forcing Allie to assume absolute sovereign authorship over her own destiny. Phase 5, the hard decision, the sovereignty of choice. With the letters in hand, Allie is dropped into the ultimate crucible of adult decision-making. She must choose between two men who are both inherently good, high-integrity individuals. Lon Hammond is not an abusive partner. He genuinely loves her and offers a beautiful, frictionless future within her established social tier. Noah offers an unpredictable, socially isolated life defined by manual labor and rural simple living. This choice represents the classic psychological battle between the social self and the essential self. Allie realizes that if she chooses Lon, she is casting a lifetime vote for a curated performance designed to please her mother and the crowd. If she chooses Noah, she must face the immediate judgment of her entire social ecosystem. She sits in her car, weeping under the weight of the friction, realizing that the first mistake of behavior change is allowing other people's expectations to dictate your internal code. She turns her vehicle around, leaves the luxury luggage behind, and walks back up Noah's steps. She chooses to standardize her life around her true identity, permanently aligning her systems with her soul. Phase 6. The Advanced Arena Fighting Cognitive Dissolution. The narrative now executes a massive, breathtaking temporal jump into the deep future, transitioning from a classic romance into an elite-level analysis of psychological endurance. We find Noah and Allie as elderly individuals residing in a modern care facility. Allie is suffering from advanced, late-stage Alzheimer's disease. She has entered a state of profound cognitive dissolution. Her memories are gone, her shared history is wiped clean, and she looks at her own husband as an absolute stranger. To the outside medical world, Allie is a broken machine whose outputs are entirely irreversible. The doctors operate under a standard clinical model of resignation. But Noah refuses to fall to the level of the clinical baseline. He deploys a highly deliberate, scientifically fascinating behavioral counterattack, the narrative retranscription system. Armed with an old, leather-bound notebook written by Allie herself when she first diagnosed her illness, Noah sits by her side every single day, reading the story of their love from the absolute beginning. The narrative retranscription system. The input, continuous, low-volume reading of the shared past. The target, activating dormant, emotional neural pathways. The biological anomaly, brief, total cognitive restoration. Noah understands that while her explicit, logical memory structures, the hippocampus, are severely degenerated, her emotional memory structures, the amygdala and the deeper soul bonds, are still quietly stored in the latent reservoir of compounding. He falls to the level of his daily system. He reads, he reminds, he loves. He embraces the absolute, crushing boredom and repetition of a system that fails 99% of the time, simply to capture the 1% window where the magic manifests. Phase 7, the breakthrough, the phase change of latent potential. The climax of the elderly narrative arc perfectly mirrors James Clear's plateau of latent potential. Noah sits by Allie's bed, reading page after page, chapter after chapter. To a casual observer, nothing is happening. Allie's face remains blank, her questions are repetitive, and the room remains cold and unyielding. The hard work of his daily reading appears to be completely wasted. Then, the room hits the metaphorical 32 degrees. A single word, a specific inflection in the story, unlocks a massive structural phase change within her brain. Suddenly, Allie's eyes lock onto Noah with absolute recognition. The fog clears entirely. She remembers his name. She remembers her children. She remembers the swan-filled lake. And she recognizes the old man sitting before her as the love of her entire existence. Decades of monotonous reading, the 32 degrees critical mass, total lucid awakening. This breakthrough is an overnight miracle to the outside world, but it is actually the direct mathematical result of thousands of invisible micro-actions executed by Noah in secret when the feedback loop was completely delayed. For a brief, intoxicating window of 5 to 10 minutes, they hold each other as equal minds, completely restored to their ideal shared identity. And even when the disease inevitably reasserts its dominance and Allie slips back into the dark fog of panic and confusion, Noah does not despair. He resets the system, prepares his mind, and gets ready to show up and execute the loop again tomorrow. Phase 8. The biological apex, the final act of devotion. The conclusion of the notebook enters the realm of the deeply spiritual and biological anomalous. Noah suffers a severe stroke, his own body breaking down under the weight of old age and relentless performance. He is placed in a separate wing of the hospital, forbidden by medical protocols from entering Allie's room at night due to safety liabilities. The system is telling him that his operational run has concluded. But a master of human performance does not let corporate regulations or physical failure dictate the final chapter of his legacy. In the dead of night, fueled by an indomitable will that defies medical logic, Noah drags his partially paralyzed body across the cold clinic floor. He breaches the environmental boundaries, slides into Allie's dark room, and approaches her bed. The final congenital fusion. The physical limitation. Paralyzed body, clinical lockdown. The operational action. Covert nighttime room navigation. The ultimate output. Simultaneous, peaceful biological exit. As he touches her hand, Allie does not wake up in a state of panic. Even in her deepest dementia, her body recognizes the familiar somatic frequency of Noah's presence. She whispers his name. They close their eyes together, their heart rates synchronize, and they execute a simultaneous, peaceful biological exit from this world. They did not merely survive life. They mastered it. They constructed a relational system so completely bulletproof that not even the systematic destruction of the brain could separate them from their identity. Phase 9, the master laws of relational endurance. The ultimate strategic value embedded within the notebook can be synthesized into 4 core principles of human performance, emotional compounding, and lifelong relationship architecture. These laws govern the deep energetic currents that dictate whether a relationship will dissolve under modern stress or harden into an unbreakable monument. Law 1. Love is a trailing measure of your daily operational systems. Most people treat romance like a goal-oriented destination. They focus entirely on the wedding day, the beautiful photos, and the initial high of attraction. But the moment the lifestyle becomes monotonous, their motivation dissolves. A world-class relationship requires you to fall in love with the unglamorous, daily grind of emotional maintenance. You do not rise to the level of your romantic vows. You fall to the level of your daily interpersonal communication systems. Law 2. You must standardize presence before you can optimize intimacy. You cannot build an extraordinary, multi-decade love story if your attention is continuously fragmented by the digital marketplace, external social status games, and a refusal to be vulnerable. Noah's superpower was his absolute, uncompromised capacity for radical presence. He designed his environment around deep listening, shared nature, and intentional focus. Strip away the cognitive friction of the outside world and show up completely for your partner. Law 3. True identity requires the total destruction of social compliance. If you allow the expectations of your parents, the standards of your economic class, or the superficial praise of the crowd to dictate your choice of partner, you are building your house on a foundation of sand. Allie's true transformation only began when she had the courage to look at her high-status luxury lifestyle, recognize it as an artificial cage, and walk away to claim authorship over her own sovereign soul. Choose authenticity over public validation. Law 4. Never allow a temporary loss of feedback to stop your compounding. The greatest threat to long-term relational success is the boredom and despair that surface when your efforts appear to produce zero immediate results. Noah spent months writing letters that were never returned, years building a house for a woman who was engaged to another, and decades reading to a wife who could not remember his name. He did not quit, because he understood that his devotion was being stored in the latent reservoir of compounding growth. Never break the chain of your commitment. Conclusion: the grand mosaic of an enduring legacy. Ultimately, Nicholas Sparks's sweeping masterpiece is far more than a sentimental love story. It is a profound, world-class blueprint tracking the ultimate capabilities of the human spirit. It is a narrative that proves that the most magnificent victories in life are not achieved through sudden, flashy bursts of inspiration or overnight transformations. Your legacy is an exact, mathematical mirror reflection of the tiny, daily, atomic choices you execute in secret when your partner cannot give you anything in return. You do not need to live a life free of suffering, free of conflict, or free of biological decline. You simply need to build an intelligent relational system, optimize your emotional environment, align your actions with your uncompromised identity, and commit to the beautiful, relentless process of showing up for those you love, 1% better every single day. Step out of the shallow routines of modern dating, claim absolute ownership over your commitments, cure your fear of vulnerability, and rewrite your internal code, one deliberate act of devotion at a time. Master the code of emotional compounding, trust in the resilience of your spirit, protect the boundaries of your shared identity, and step boldly into the magnificent, undeniable magic of an enduring, integrated life. At the end of the day, guys, the ultimate lesson of the Notebook is that the greatest love stories aren't the ones that are easy. They are the ones where two people choose to show up, drop their armor, and fight for each other every single day, even when the world, the clock, and their own biology are stacked completely against them. Real devotion is a superpower, and it is entirely within your control to build. If today's deep dive psychological and neurobiological masterclass into emotional compounding and relational endurance lit a fire under your perspective, please show some love by smashing that like button, sharing the exact commitment system you are going to implement tomorrow in the comments below, and clicking subscribe to join our global community of high-level creators, thinkers, and barrier breakers. Turn on those notifications so you never miss another masterclass in personal mastery. Thank you so much for watching. Keep refining your inputs, protect your anchors, and remember, you don't rise to your romantic goals, you fall to the level of your daily relational systems. We'll see you in the next video.